Life Stories.
Good evening, everybody. How are you doing? I hope this finds you well. It's an absolute honour and a privilege to be here. Thank you very much to LifeStories for having me on to share the most important thing in my life, which is the gospel. It's an absolute honour and privilege to do this. I'm just going to start quite simply from what led me to the point to when I was 25 years old, when I came to faith and made a conscious decision to give my life to Jesus and to follow him. And it was quite a journey. I grew up near the capital of Scotland, which is Edinburgh, in a place called Musselburgh, a small fishing town. I'm an only child, and my mum and dad, lovely people, but they worked every hour that they were given. You know, we were working class. We didn't have a lot, but you don't need a lot to love each other. You know. I spent a lot of my childhood on my own. As a result, I was always at my grandparents' house or with my cousins, and but I always longed to be with my mother and father more, but they were doing their very best to provide and keep a roof over our heads and keep us fed. And I was quite an anxious kid. I think some people would say high maintenance, but I didn't really know how to deal with anything emotionally. I grew up in a culture where you weren't really permitted to become emotional. If you were really happy and made too much noise, you were told to be quiet, or if you were really upset, or if you were badly behaved or naughty, you were told to go to your room. And I didn't have any emotional role models, so I was just quite anxious and unsure of myself most of the time. Although I'll be honest, I wasn't really aware of what that was until very recently, actually. Scotland isn't a very emotionally open country. I think the only place you're permitted to get emotional is at a football match. So it's it's just the culture that we grow up in. Especially for men, anyway. So I was quite anxious as a kid, and always seeking approval. Always felt like I had to prove myself, and then I found music at a young age, and music really kind of joined the dots for me in a massive way. I was able to focus all of this energy, which I thought it was energy, or this emotional energy anyway, and I was really quite good at it. I loved it so much that I was willing to put the time and the effort into practice, and I got offered a chance to go to a music school and eventually a music college, a really prestigious one. I didn't really understand how good it was until after I'd left, but by the time I was 15, my mum and dad had marital problems. They weren't Christian, but they just grew apart, and when they did separate, we lost everything. It was a really horrible time, and nobody took the time to explain to me what was going on either. So I just had so many unanswered questions, and to deal with all of this emotional stuff, I started drinking with my friends, drinking alcohol and blowing off steam, as many teenagers do in one way or another, whether it's sports or hanging out with friends. I found my resolve in alcohol and partying, but it took away this feeling of anxiety for me, and I thought, this is what I need to do in order to feel normal. And it was so far from normal, but I used to think that I loved drinking, but I just loved anything that meant I didn't have to sit in my own skin. And that progressed to the point where I was just getting unconscious at parties. And then I got myself into quite a bit of bother, and then I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and somebody attacked me one night, and I nearly lost my life. They nearly beat me to death. And after that, I was so terrified of everything that my alcohol intake just increased exponentially. It just started to snowball, and It wasn't long before I was taking drugs, and things started to unravel very quickly for me. I started to lose friends, and relationships started to break down, and I started to move around from groups of friends and places. And the fact that I got into music college and moving to another city meant a fresh start for me, but I took all my problems with me and they just started again. And I had this opportunity to study at a world-renowned music conservatoire, but my focus was on alcohol and partying, and the student lifestyle really offered me the opportunity to hide all my pain and trauma and brokenness, which I'd kept hidden from everybody. I'd never spoken to anybody about how I felt, and I just felt chronically lonely and empty, abandoned, and completely worthless. And even without my parents splitting up, I think I felt quite lonely since I was a young kid. A good friend of mine says, if you feel lonely, there's a good chance you don't like the person you're alone with. And I can't remember a time as a kid where I actually felt any sense of self-worth or value, or certainly love or compassion to myself. I was always seeking something else, never felt good enough. And as I said, I always felt lonely. I think the only solace I had was music, which was taking a back seat at this point to the increasing amount of substance abuse that was overtaking my life. It was quite incredible. I got myself into so much debt. I was in and out of hospital, and just crazy stuff. And to keep a very long story quite short, because I'd like to get to the stuff that has changed everything. This continued to progress for the next 5 years. A trip around the world and in and out of hospitals and institutions, and mental health problems, medication. And suicide attempts, you name it, it was there. There was a lot of anger and the inability to understand what was going on. But eventually, by 2004, 2005, I was homeless and living on the streets of Edinburgh. And that was through choice. I decided to be homeless in order to feed my addiction. My mum and dad were back in each other's life at that point. Not together. They decided to put their differences to the side because they were increasingly worried about my mental health, and because I was getting arrested.
I can see light beams falling on me. 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 And everything glows, everything glows, everything glows. You are with me wherever I go. And I can feel the lightning dance on my skin. I can feel lightning dance on my skin. can feel lightning dance on my skin. I can feel lightning dance on my skin. And everything glows, everything glows, everything glows. You are with me wherever I go, and I am alive, I am free. I feel the fire of love when I breathe. I am alive, I am free. I feel the fire of love when I breathe. Oh. And I can hear your heartbeat beckoning me. I can hear your heartbeat beckoning me. And I can hear your heartbeat beckoning me. I can hear your heartbeat beckoning me. And everything glows, everything glows, everything glows. You are with me wherever I go, and everything glows, everything glows, everything glows. You are with me wherever I go. You are with me wherever I go. You are with me wherever I go.
Life Stories.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to have you with us. This is another episode with me, Keith Cook, of Man to Man with the BMF Life Stories and the BMF UK group. It's great to have our guests today. We have Stephen, we have David, and we have Duncan, ready to tackle the subject of men and emotions. And we were just talking about haircuts before we got on, and you can see we've all done our hair ready for this video today. If you've got any advice for men underneath of how to keep the hair slick, please do message underneath. Would love that bit of advice, because you can get emotional about your hair, can't you? Especially when you're as young as me and it starts to go back and you start to realize you're going bald. Okay, so our first question today, straight off the bat, is it okay for a Christian man to get angry? And if yes, what is it okay to get angry about? So I'll give that straight to Duncan. Duncan, is it okay for you as a Christian man to get mad and angry about situations?
Yes, there's a line in one of the scripts that said you shouldn't let the sun go down in your anger. You know, it's nothing that you should keep going on with. But I was in conversation recently with a chap who lost his niece at the Dunblane shootings. When you may remember, there was a massacre at a school that was local to to where I live. I was on duty in the hospital at the time when the emergency call came in for this major incident, and I was talking about that to him just a couple of weeks ago, and that really made me very, very angry. I was mad at that, and I was saying that to him that I even railed with God about it. Just questioned where the protection of God and the angel of God were that particular day when a lot of these wee youngsters in primary one were massacred, and I was very, very angry that day, and it still churns up now and again. So yeah, it's if you can be angry against the exploitation of vulnerable people, abusive children, and stuff like that. That really makes me very, very angry, and I think it's not unreasonable to be angry about these kind of things. Yeah.
Great answer. David, what about you?
Well, anger is a natural emotion that we all, I wouldn't say suffer with, but we're all prone to. For me, I think it's how we control that anger. I might be waiting for a parking space. A guy jumps in front of me. I'm angry. If I get out and punch him, then I've just walked straight into sin. I've just got to accept the fact, if that's what he wants to do, let him get on with it. Because that anger will affect me a lot more than it'll affect him. There's such a thing as righteous anger. Duncan's just mentioned on it. Injustice against people, things that go on around us that we really have little or no control over. But it makes us feel angry inside. There's a righteousness about that anger, but we don't go out and revolt against it. We don't take that anger out on society or start, looting buildings and things like that, because anger then has moved into sin. And that's what we've got to be very careful of, that we don't let our anger, let's be honest, married people and not married people, we fall out with our partners. But as Duncan so rightly pointed out, don't let the sun go down. It's much better to be reconciled than to be right. So get rid of that anger, go for a walk, do whatever, give it to God, but don't move from anger into sin.
Great. It's great wisdom. Stephen, I'm going to go to question 2 for you. Jealousy. So we're talking about anger and jealousy. In the Bible, it seems to be the only emotion that's altogether wrong. Why is this, do you think? Why jealousy? Why is there never... Because we were talking about anger and we got justification for anger, but biblically, there's never a justification for us to be jealous. Why do you think this is?
Yeah, jealousy is an important emotion or response that we have. Jealousy is related to love. It's part of our love circuits. It's part of how we respond to love. But in terms of the scriptures, it's interesting that when God was given the 10 Commandments back in Exodus chapter 20, he does talk about how he is a jealous God. And he talks about in those 10 Commandments to say that we should have no idols ahead of God. Because with jealousy, God won't tolerate a divided loyalty. That's part of God loves us so passionately, and he pursues us passionately. He wants a relationship with us, and he resents anything that gets in the way of that relationship. And he is a jealous God for that. He doesn't want to have anything between us. So jealousy is an important part of the love response that we have as human beings. But the thing is, God wants the best for us. That's part of his love for us. He wants the best for us. And if we're putting other things in between our relationship with him, and we are putting more time and effort into these things, the bottom line from that is that we will probably miss the purpose of our life, and certainly we won't fulfill the full God-given potential that God has placed within us. And some psychology research has shown that only 1% of the human race fulfills their full potential. So that's a really important thing to focus on. I think that comes from Abraham Maslow.
Life Stories.
Because I was waking up in hospital, and because I was, just putting my life on the line a number of times, and nobody could understand why I was doing it. I remember my father saying to me, "Son, just don't drink." But I'd passed that point of no return. I had become an addict. I'm pretty sure I was alcoholic by the time I was 17, and this was my sole focus in life. I just couldn't concentrate or focus on anything well at all. And to the best of my ability, I just I used alcohol to anesthetize the pain that I was in, because I couldn't find answers anywhere else. So by the time I got to 2004, 2005, I decided to become homeless in order to feed my addiction in peace, away from the persistent complaining and nagging of my parents. Well, that's how I perceived it. They were just so worried and frantically worried that they were desperately trying anything. My mum even got me arrested once because she was at her wit's end. She didn't know what to do with me. But I was so consumed with depression and anxiety and self-harming. I've got scars all over my body from, I didn't understand the pain I was in, so I just used to hurt myself in order to kind of get a release, or try and find something that would equate to the emotional pain I was in. The amount of dishonesty that ruled my life as well was incredible. I used to come up with such incredible fabrications of the truth in order to try and equate the pain that was in. Like, I used to make up people had passed away, and just absolute crazy dishonesty. It wasn't so much I was seeking sympathy or attention, but I was trying, I think subconsciously I was trying to figure out a way to make all this pain make sense. And I used to pretend to be people that weren't me, you know what I mean, or just make up personas when I was drunk and I made a real fool of myself. Everybody knew that I was just a drunk, but it was just crazy. And eventually, when I was homeless, I had nothing else. I'd lost all my friends. My family had locked their doors to me because they were scared of me. I was so unpredictable and aggressive when I was drunk, and quite rightly, they were terrified, man. You know, I'm a big lad. I drank everything that I got money for. I drank the lot, and once I'd had a drink, any drug was on the table. You know, I'm nothing short of a miracle that I'm still alive. And then, in order to feed that addiction, I had to do some really degrading stuff, man. I was begging on the streets. I was stealing. I was doing things for money, which I would never have dreamed of having to do. But in order to meet that need of addiction, which is all consuming, a 24/7 job with no holidays, no breaks, no pay, but it costs you absolutely everything. Every kind of piece of dignity or self-worth or anything good that you might have thought of yourself, it just goes right out the window as soon as you start succumbing to the behaviors that are involved in addiction. It was just wrapped in guilt and shame, and it just validated all of these things that I thought about myself already before, you know, I even got to that point, you know, things that were very likely untrue as a young kid, but there was a lot of trauma involved as well. You know, some of the things that I experienced were absolutely terrifying, and in order to deal with that, I just kept drinking, and, you know, I'd nearly died a number of times. And after sleeping on the streets for a while, and especially the winter of 2005, I said to myself, I know I'm going to die. I know I'm going to die. I can't even function properly if I don't do something. I am going to die. So I started reaching out for help, and a chance a chance encounter with my mum at the doctor's one day when she was worried about me. She said, look, there's a leaflet on the wall here for the Bethany Christian Centre, which is a homeless hostel in Edinburgh. And I gave them a phone and said, could you take me in? And I'd been banned from most of the homeless hostels in Edinburgh because when I got drunk, I thought people were trying to attack me. I was hallucinating to the point thinking that people were going to hurt me, and I would get very aggressive and get kicked out because there's zero tolerance for violence. There's a lot of vulnerable people around these places, and quite right. So I phoned Bethany and explained it, and they recognised instantly that I was alcoholic, and they took me in and offered me a bed in their homeless hostel on the 13th of February 2006. And it was a 17-man hostel. Everyone was homeless. All of us were seeking recovery or sobriety in some form. And I was just glad to be in a warm bed. I was glad to be somewhere that was safe, that there was rules that I just couldn't drink there. It was a dry house. And I was suddenly, I was given this chance. It didn't seem like a lot, a bed in a homeless hostel, but man, what a gift it was. I don't think I would have lasted much longer. The first thing I noticed was I thawed out, because my hands had been freezing cold for the better part of 6 months, and the cold in Edinburgh is just incredible. You're cold from the inside out, and it's incredibly painful because it's just trying to kill you, man. I remember feeling warm for the first time in a long time. It took about a week for my hands to get warm, and it's just wild, man. And then they had food there, so once my bodily functions came back to working order, I was able to eat for the first time in a long time, because there was points I couldn't even keep the alcohol down. It was just wild. And then I was just terrified of everything, man. People just saying hello to me. I felt so out of my shell because it's very difficult to describe. I was just terrified, completely bewildered about what was going on. But they did have a recovery program which was very Jesus centered, because the Bethany Christian Trust is a Christian charity. Now I was cool with that, man. I mean, I've been to church as a kid with my gran, lovely God-fearing woman that she was, and I didn't really get it, but we lived in the north of she lived in the north of Scotland, so if I behaved on the church service, they sang the last song in English because the rest of it was in Gaelic, and I didn't understand the rest of it, man. But it was lovely. I loved these stories about Jesus and the disciples and Moses. They're just amazing stories, man. I never thought that they would have any kind of impact on my life.
Life Stories.